How is it possible that in just one test, Lewis Hamilton has shocked Ferrari and sparked the first real doubts around Charles Leclerc? Because what happened in Fiorano was not normal. It was not a simple day of testing. It was a silent demonstration, measured in data, in laps, in consistency, that is beginning to change the balance within the team. And when you see the numbers, when you understand what he did lap after lap, you're going to realize something very clear. Hamilton has not arrived at Ferrari to adapt. He has arrived to impose his own system from the first moment. What is happening at Ferrari cannot be understood if we do not return to the origin, to the first moment in which Lewis Hamilton gets into the SF26 at Fiorano. Because that's where it all begins. A shakedown that, in theory, should simply be a procedure. A few laps to check that the car works, without looking for performance, without looking for limits. But with Hamilton, that's never the case. From the first moment, his approach is completely different. It's not just there to roll. It's there to read the car, to feel every reaction, every weight transfer, every slight loss of grip. And most importantly, to translate all that into useful data. Because Hamilton has something that very few drivers in history have had at the same level. The ability to convert sensations into technical information that engineers can use immediately. And that was exactly what happened. In just a few laps, the Briton began to generate an internal database that surprised the team. Not because of the quantity, but because of the quality. Because the reports that came out of the car were not those of a driver adapting. They were those of someone who was already understanding how to extract performance. And this is where the first key point appears. Ferrari came from a context where, as we saw at the start of 2025, the car had clear limitations, inconsistencies, and a performance window that was difficult to exploit consistently. Leclerc had learned to live with that. He had adapted his style, he had built his speed around those limitations. But Hamilton arrives with a completely different mentality. It doesn't fit the car. Start questioning it. It starts to push him out of that comfort zone that Ferrari had been working on for a long time. And that generates something very interesting within the team. Because when you compare two styles, two ways of interpreting the same car, differences begin to appear that were not visible before. Differences in the way of braking, in the way of attacking the curves, how the minimum speed is managed, details that in telemetry become tense, and in some cases, something else. And although at that moment everything was internal, everything was controlled, the seed was already planted. Hamilton was not following the path that Ferrari expected. He was building his own. And that takes us directly to the next point, the moment where everything really explodes. The Pirelli test. Because if the shakedown was an introduction, what came after was a declaration of intentions. And that is where the numbers begin to tell a story that within Ferrari they cannot ignore. And then comes the moment that completely changes the perception within Ferrari. The Pirelli test in Fiorano. A scenario that, in theory, should not generate headlines, or noise, or deep analysis. But with Hamilton on the track, that was impossible. Because what he did that day was not normal. It was straight up crazy. 142 laps. 423 kilometers. In a single day. It's not just an impressive number, it's a message. A direct message to Ferrari, to the engineers, and also to Charles Leclerc. Hamilton was not there to fulfill the program. It was there to devour the car, understand it in all its phases, in all its conditions, and above all, to take it to the limit again and again without losing consistency. And this is where everything begins to take on a much more serious dimension. Because in this type of test, it is normal to see short runs, specific tests, constant configuration changes, long breaks in the pits. But Hamilton did the opposite. He chain turns, simulated real conditions, repeated patterns. He sought stability in performance. And that generates something that for engineers is pure gold: comparable data, reliable data. Data that allows us to understand the real behavior of the car, not in theory, but in constant execution. And there is one detail that changes everything: the consistency. Because it's not about doing an isolated fast lap. It's about maintaining a solid pace, while changing tires, while the track evolves, while artificial rain conditions completely change the grip. And Hamilton did it, lap after lap. No sudden falls, no errors, no strange spikes in telemetry. That is not easy. That's elite level. And this is where Ferrari begins to see something it didn't expect so soon. Because this type of information allows us to detect things that normally take weeks to appear. How the car responds in extreme conditions, where it loses stability, how it behaves in load transitions, and most importantly, how it can be improved. Hamilton wasn't just driving. It was building a technical base to evolve the SF-26. And that completely changes his role within the team, because he stops being a pilot in adaptation, and it is beginning to be a key piece in development. But there is something else, something that adds tension to this whole story. Because while Hamilton completed one of the most intense days in memory at Fiorano, Charles Leclerc had not yet taken to the track in that test. And that means only one thing, that when Leclerc gets into the car, it's not going to start from scratch. It's going to start from a point that Hamilton has already redefined. And in Formula One, that can make enormous differences, because the driver who understands the car first, it is the pilot that dictates the direction of development, the pilot who influences decisions, the driver who ends up having an advantage, even within his own team. And right now, everything indicates that Hamilton has taken that first blow, a silent knock, but tremendously powerful. And now is where all this stops being just data and begins to become a story that can completely change the balance within Ferrari. Because what Hamilton has done in Fiorano does not stay on the circuit. It moves to the team, to the meetings, to the decisions, to the direction that the SF-26 is going to take in the next races. And this is where the most delicate point of all appears, Charles Leclerc. Because for years, Ferrari has revolved around him. Your driving style, his way of understanding the car, his way of attacking the curves and managing the limit. All development, to a greater or lesser extent, was aligned with that. But now, there is a new variable, a completely different one. Hamilton doesn't just bring experience, bring another philosophy, another way to interpret performance, another way to build speed. And when two such strong references coexist within the same team, something inevitable happens. Comparison, direct, constant, relentless. And that comparison has already begun, because engineers now have something they didn't have before. Two completely different ways of extracting performance from the same car. Two different readings of the same telemetry. Two possible paths to develop the SF-26. And this is where Ferrari faces a silent but key decision. Where to evolve the car. Follow the line that you already knew with Leclerc, or start integrating or even prioritizing what Hamilton is showing from the get-go. Because there is something that cannot be ignored. Hamilton has arrived, and in a matter of days has generated an amount of information and understanding of the car that normally takes weeks, even months. And that gives him a very powerful position within the team. A position that is not one with a name. You win with data. And the most interesting thing of all is that this is just beginning. Because when Leclerc gets into the car in comparable conditions, when real references begin to cross, when both drivers push to the limit in the same context, that's where we're going to see the true magnitude of what Hamilton has started at Fiorano. But if something is already clear, Ferrari no longer has a single path. He has two. And when that happens in Formula One, not only is a car defined, a hierarchy is defined, an internal struggle, a balance that can be broken at any moment. Hamilton has struck the first blow. Silent, accurate, backed by numbers. And now, the question is not whether Ferrari is going to change. The question is, who is going to lead that change? What happened in Fiorano is not a simple preseason episode, nor one more test lost on the calendar. It's a sign that something is changing within Ferrari. Because Hamilton has not arrived little by little, he has not needed time to understand, he has not waited for the season to progress. It has broken in, with data, with consistency, with a way of working that has shaken the team from within. And that, in Formula One, has consequences. Because when a driver is able to generate that level of impact in such a short time, he is no longer an addition. It becomes a reference, in someone who can set the course. And that's where Ferrari enters uncharted territory. Because for years, everything was clear. There was an address. There was a leader. There was a way to do things. But now there are two visions, two styles, two ways to push the car to the limit. And that may be the best thing that has happened to Ferrari in a long time. Or the beginning of an internal tension that changes everything. Because if the history of Formula One has taught us anything, it's just that when two drivers of this level share a team, they don't just compete against others. They compete with each other. And many times, that is where everything is really decided. Hamilton has already struck the first blow. Silent, but devastating. Now, it's Leclerc's turn to respond. And to Ferrari, make a decision that can define its future. Let me know in the comments what you think about all this.